Queen Margot, The Amulet of Shadows, The Light Beyond. Chapter 1, The Wedding of Shadows. The bells of Castle Valdoria tolled like war drums. Not for battle. Not for death. But for a wedding. And yet, every clang echoed with dread. The sky above the capital city of Caerthorn was a bruised violet, streaked with crimson clouds that refused to move. A comet, red as blood, hung low on the horizon, pulsing like a wound in the heavens. The priests called it an omen. The alchemists whispered of ancient prophecies. The common folk simply locked their doors and prayed. Inside the castle's torchlit halls, the nobility gathered in silks and steel. The House of Valdoria, rulers of the realm, had summoned their enemies to dine, dance, and marry. It was a union forged not in love, but in desperation. Princess Margot stood before her mirror, her wedding gown a cascade of silver and shadow. Her raven-black hair was braided with moonstones, her lips painted the color of crushed roses. She looked every inch the royal bride, but her eyes betrayed her. They were sharp, intelligent, and utterly furious. Behind her, the Queen Mother entered like a storm. Catherine de Valdoria, known in whispers as the Black Alchemist, wore a gown of midnight velvet, embroidered with serpents and stars. Her fingers were stained with herbs and poisons. Her eyes, cold as obsidian, studied Margot like a specimen. "You look divine," Catherine said, voice smooth as silk soaked in venom. "I look like a sacrifice," Margot replied. Catherine smiled. "That's precisely the point." In the great hall, the guests assembled. The nobles of Valdoria sat on one side, their banners stitched with lions and flame. On the other, the Wild Marches, a rugged, rebellious kingdom whose prince had arrived with a retinue of warriors and mystics. Henry of Navarre, the groom, stood tall in a cloak of forest green. His eyes were amber, his smile disarming. Around his neck hung a strange amulet, a shard of crystal bound in silver, pulsing faintly with light. Some said it was cursed. Others said it chose him. Margot approached the altar, her steps slow and deliberate. Every eye watched. Every whisper buzzed. She met Henry's gaze, and saw something unexpected. Kindness, curiosity, and pain. They joined hands. The priest began the rites. And as the final vow was spoken, the comet above the castle flared, blinding red, and a gust of wind shattered every candle in the hall. Darkness fell. Later that night, the castle feasted. Masked dancers twirled beneath chandeliers. Goblets overflowed with wine and secrets. Behind every smile hid a dagger. Behind every toast, a threat. Margot slipped away from the crowd, her new husband trailing behind. They found themselves in the moon garden, where silver blossoms bloomed under starlight. Henry removed his mask. Margot did not. "You hate me," he said gently. "I hate what you represent." He nodded. "That makes two of us." They sat in silence. Then Henry touched the amulet. "It's called a Larian," he said. "It belonged to a seer who saw the end of the world." Margot raised an eyebrow. "And you wear it to a wedding?" "I wear it because it shows me things. Visions. Warnings." Margot leaned closer. "What does it show you now?" Henry hesitated. You. Standing in fire. Holding a sword. She laughed, bitter and beautiful. Then it's broken. But Henry didn't laugh. He looked at her as if she were the prophecy itself. Elsewhere in the castle, the Queen Mother stirred her cauldron. She whispered to shadows. She fed the fire with hair and blood. She summoned a vision, and saw a crown shattered, a city burning, and her daughter kissing a man who was not her husband. Catherine's eyes narrowed. She would not allow fate to win. In the dungeons, 2 men arrived. La Mole, Knight of the Silver Flame, noble and idealistic. Kokana's, mercenary captain, fierce and loyal. They had come to serve the crown, but found themselves caught in a web of lies. La Mole saw Margot once, in the garden, and never forgot her. Kokana saw the Queen Mother's eyes, and vowed never to cross her. As midnight approached, the castle grew restless. A mirror cracked in the bridal chamber, without touch. A raven flew through the window and spoke a single word, blood. And in the sky, the comet pulsed once more. The wedding was complete. The war had begun. Chapter 2: The Masquerade of Intrigue. The Castle of Thorns had never looked so alive. Torches blazed in iron sconces. Music echoed through vaulted halls. Silken banners fluttered from balconies, stitched with lions, serpents, and stars. The masquerade had begun. It was tradition, they said. A celebration of unity. A night of masks and mystery, where enemies danced as lovers and lovers plotted like assassins. But beneath the laughter, the castle trembled. The comet still burned in the sky, lower now, redder. The priests had stopped speaking. The seers had vanished. And in the Queen Mother's chambers, the cauldron boiled. Margot stood at the top of the grand staircase, her mask carved from obsidian and shaped like a raven's face. Her gown shimmered like moonlight on water, and her heart beat like a war drum. She had married Henry of Navarre. She had smiled, bowed, and kissed him before the court. But she had not given him her heart. That belonged to no one. Not yet. Below, Henry danced with nobles and mystics, his amulet glowing faintly beneath his tunic. He moved like a man born to charm, but his eyes kept drifting upward, searching for her. Margot descended the stairs. The crowd parted. And the game began. La Mole watched from the shadows. He wore no mask. His armor was polished, his cloak embroidered with the sigil of the silver flame. He had come to serve the crown, but his eyes betrayed him. They followed Margot. He had seen her once, in the moon garden. She had laughed at something Henry said, and the sound had pierced him like a blade. He had sworn then, silently, to protect her. Even from himself. Kokana's elbowed him. You look like a man about to jump into a fire. La Mole didn't blink. I already have. The music swelled. Margot danced with Henry. Their movements were graceful, practiced. But their words were sharp. You're watching me, she said. I'm trying to understand you. You won't. Henry smiled. I wear an amulet that shows me visions. I've seen you in fire, in battle, in love. I think I understand more than you know. Margot's eyes narrowed. Then you know I don't trust you. I don't trust myself, Henry whispered. But I trust you. She faltered. Just for a moment. Then the music ended, and the crowd applauded. In the upper gallery, Catherine de Valdoria stirred her goblet. She watched her daughter. She watched Henry. And she watched the night and the shadows. She turned to her steward. Bring me the seer. The steward hesitated. He's blind. And mad. Catherine smiled. Perfect. The seer arrived at midnight. He was ancient, wrapped in robes of ash and bone. His eyes were milky white, his voice a rasp. Catherine offered him wine. He refused. She offered him gold. He laughed. Then she offered him blood. He drank. And he spoke. I see a crown shattered. I see a bride in chains. I see a night pierced by love. I see fire. So much fire. Catherine leaned forward. And my daughter? The seer wept. She will choose love. And the world will burn. Margot slipped away from the ballroom. She wandered the secret passages of the castle, her mask still on, her thoughts a storm. She found herself in the old chapel, where the stained glass windows glowed with moonlight. La Mole was there. He turned, startled. Then bowed. I didn't mean to intrude, he said. You didn't. They stood in silence. Then Margot removed her mask. La Mole's breath caught. You're beautiful, he said. Margot smiled. I'm dangerous. He stepped closer. I know. Their hands touched. Their lips almost did. Then the bells rang. A scream echoed through the halls. And the masquerade ended. A servant had been found, poisoned, eyes black, mouth foaming. Catherine watched the body with cold satisfaction. Henry searched the castle for answers. Margot returned to her chambers, heart racing. La Mole stood in the chapel, alone, whispering her name. And in the sky, the comet pulsed once more. Chapter 3, The Prophecy of Night. The moon over Carethorne was wrong. It hung too low. Too red. Too still. The priests refused to name it. The alchemists locked their doors. And in the royal observatory, King Charles IX of Valdoria stared at it for hours, unmoving, unblinking, whispering to the stars. He had not slept since the wedding. He had not spoken since the masquerade. But he had begun to paint. His chambers were covered in murals, scenes of fire, blood, and broken crowns. A bride in chains. A knight impaled. A comet splitting the sky. And always, always, the same face in the center. Margot. Margot herself wandered the castle gardens, sleepless. She wore a cloak of midnight velvet, her hair loose, her thoughts louder than the wind. The wedding had bound her to Henry. The masquerade had drawn her to La Mole. And now, the visions had begun. She saw flashes, herself in armor, sword raised, eyes glowing. She saw Catherine whispering to shadows. She saw Henry bleeding beneath a tree of flame. And she saw La Mole, reaching for her, mouth open in a scream. She clutched her chest. The amulet Henry wore, it pulsed when she touched it. She had felt it during their dance. It was more than a relic. It was a key. To what, she did not know. Henry stood in the library, surrounded by scrolls and dust. He had found a book, the Codex of Ilarion, written by a prophet who had vanished in fire. It spoke of a bride who would choose love over power, and in doing so, awaken the flame of the end. He read the passage again. She shall wear silver and shadow. She shall kiss the night, and the world shall burn. Henry closed the book. He looked at the amulet. And he began to understand. Catherine summoned the seer again. This time, she brought blood from the king himself. The seer drank. He screamed. He convulsed. Then he spoke. The king shall fall. The night shall rise. The bride shall choose. And the mother shall die. Catherine slapped him. But the words echoed. She turned to her steward. Find the knight. Kill him. La Mole trained in the courtyard, unaware. His sword sang through the air. His armor gleamed. But his thoughts were elsewhere. Margot. He had seen her in the chapel. He had touched her hand. And now, he dreamed of her, every night, every breath, every heartbeat. Kokanas watched him with a frown. You're in love, he said. La Mole nodded. You're doomed, Kokanas added. La Mole smiled. I know. Charles IX screamed in his sleep. He saw visions, Margot crowned in fire. Henry devoured by wolves. Catherine melting into ash. And himself, alone, forgotten, painting the end of the world. He awoke. He summoned his guards. And he ordered the execution of every seer in the kingdom. Margot found Henry in the library. They spoke in whispers. You've seen it too, she said. Henry nodded. The prophecy. The fire. The choice. Margot touched the amulet. It pulsed. Henry leaned closer. It's you. You're the key. Margot's eyes filled with tears. Then we're all doomed. Henry kissed her forehead. And the comet flared. La Mole was ambushed in the garden. Assassins in black. Daggers dipped in poison. He fought like a storm, blade flashing, blood flying. Kokanas arrived, roaring, cleaving through enemies like a beast. They survived. But La Mole was wounded. Margot found him bleeding beneath the silver blossoms. She wept. She kissed him. And the prophecy began. Catherine watched from her tower. She saw the kiss. She saw the comet. And she saw her own reflection, cracking. She screamed. And the castle trembled. Chapter 4, Blades and Poison. The castle no longer slept. Not truly. Not since the wedding. Not since the masquerade. Not since the prophecy began to whisper through the halls like a forgotten hymn. Servants moved in silence. Guards doubled their patrols. The kitchens brewed more than soup, herbs, powders, tinctures. And in the Queen Mother's chambers, the cauldron boiled with a vengeance. Catherine de Valdoria had declared war. Not with armies. Not with banners. With poison. Margot sat by La Mole's bedside. He had survived the ambush, barely. His wounds were deep, his fever high. But his spirit remained unbroken. She held his hand, whispering stories from her childhood. Tales of secret tunnels, of forbidden books, of stars that spoke in dreams. He listened, eyes half closed, lips curved in a faint smile. "You should rest," she said. "I'd rather die listening to you," he replied. She kissed his forehead. And the prophecy stirred. Henry paced the library. He had read every scroll, every codex, every cursed page. The amulet pulsed stronger now, reacting to Margot's presence, to La Mole's pain, to Catherine's fury. He saw visions, Margot in chains, La Mole burning, Catherine crowned in bone. He knew what was coming. And he knew he had to act. Cocanas trained alone. His sword struck the air like thunder. His breath steamed in the cold. He had seen the assassins. He had smelled the poison. And he had begun to suspect the truth. The Queen Mother was preparing a purge. He found Henry in the courtyard. "We need to talk," he said. Henry nodded. "We need to fight." Catherine summoned her apothecaries. She gave them names: La Mole, Cocanas, the seer, the steward, and, finally, Margot. The apothecaries hesitated. Catherine smiled. "Make it elegant." Margot returned to her chambers. She found a goblet of wine waiting. A note beside it, "To your health." She stared at it. Then she poured it into the fire. The flames turned green. She did not scream. She did not cry. She summoned her maid. "Find me the knight," she said. La Mole awoke in the night. Margot stood beside him, eyes blazing. "They tried to poison me," she said. La Mole sat up. "Then we're out of time." They kissed. It was not gentle. It was not slow. It was desperate, furious, and full of fire. And the comet pulsed. Henry met with Cocanas in the crypts. They spoke of rebellion, of escape, of prophecy. Henry revealed the amulet's secret. It could show the future, but only in fragments. Cocanas asked to see. Henry placed it in his hand. Cocanas saw fire, blood, Margot screaming. He dropped it. Henry caught it. And they knew what must be done. Catherine brewed her final potion. It shimmered like moonlight. It smelled of roses and rot. She poured it into a goblet and handed it to Charles. "Drink," she said. Charles obeyed. And the visions returned. He saw Margot crowned in flame. He saw Henry dead. He saw Catherine melting into ash. He screamed. And the castle trembled. Margot and La Mole fled through the tunnels. Cocanas led them. Henry followed. They reached the Temple of Embers, hidden beneath the castle. There, they swore oaths of love, of loyalty, of war. The amulet glowed. The comet flared. And the prophecy awakened. Chapter 5: Hearts in Chains. The Temple of Embers was silent. Its walls, carved from obsidian and bone, shimmered with ancient runes. Its altar, once used for rites of fire, now bore the weight of oaths whispered in the dark. Margot and La Mole stood beneath the sigil of the silver flame, hands entwined, hearts exposed. "I swear," La Mole said, voice trembling, "to love you beyond death, beyond prophecy, beyond the ruin of kingdoms." Margot touched his cheek. "And I swear to fight for you, even if it means defying my blood, my crown, and my fate." The amulet pulsed. The comet flared. And the chains began to tighten. Henry watched from the shadows. He had followed them, not to spy, but to understand. The amulet had shown him visions of Margot in fire, of La Mole bleeding, of himself alone beneath a shattered sky. He had hoped they were wrong. Now he knew they were not. He turned away, heart heavy, footsteps silent. Catherine brewed a new potion. Not poison. Not prophecy. Desire. She had found an ancient recipe, one that twisted longing into obsession. She poured it into a vial shaped like a serpent and handed it to her steward. "Slip it into the night's wine," she said. The steward hesitated. Catherine's eyes burned. "Do it." La Mole returned to his chambers. He drank the wine. And the dreams began. Margot, cloaked in flame, reaching for him. Catherine, whispering in his ear. Henry, bleeding beneath the stars. He awoke in a sweat. And he could not breathe. Margot wandered the gardens. She had not seen Henry since the temple. She had not spoken to Catherine since the poisoning. And she had begun to feel the chains, around her heart, around her choices, around her soul. She found Henry beneath the silver tree. He looked at her, eyes tired. "You love him," he said. "I didn't mean to." Henry nodded. "Neither did I." They stood in silence. Then Margot stepped forward. She kissed him. It was soft. Sad. Full of apology. And the comet pulsed. Kokana's trained with fury. He had seen the way La Mole looked at Margot. He had seen the way Henry looked at her too. And he had begun to suspect that love would be the kingdom's undoing. He found Catherine in the crypts. "I want out," he said. Catherine smiled. "You're already in." Charles IX painted in blood. He had begun to mix his paints with herbs, with ash, with whispers. His murals now moved, faces shifting, flames flickering, eyes blinking. He painted Margot kissing La Mole. Then he painted her kissing Henry. Then he screamed. And the walls cracked. La Mole found Margot in the chapel. He kissed her. She kissed him back. But something was wrong. His eyes were wild. His breath was shallow. His hands trembled. Margot pulled away. "What's happening?" La Mole collapsed. The potion had begun to work. Chapter 6: The Hunt of the King. The black forest whispered. Its trees, ancient and twisted, loomed like sentinels over the royal hunting party. Mist curled around roots and branches, thick as breath. Ravens circled overhead, silent. Even the wolves kept their distance. King Charles IX rode at the front, eyes wild, lips cracked, fingers twitching around the reins. He wore a cloak of crimson and black, his crown tilted, his sword unsheathed. He was not hunting deer. He was hunting fate. Margot watched from the castle tower. She had begged Charles not to go. She had pleaded with Catherine to intervene. But the Queen Mother had simply smiled and handed her a vial of calming herbs. "Let him chase his ghosts," she said. "They always return." Margot did not believe her. Not anymore. La Mole recovered slowly. The potion had left scars, not on his skin, but in his mind. His dreams were fractured, his thoughts tangled. He remembered Margot's kiss. He remembered Henry's fury. And he remembered Catherine's eyes. He began to write. Letters. Poems. Oaths. Each one for Margot. Each one a promise. Henry rode with the king. He had no choice. Charles had demanded his presence, claiming the amulet was cursed, claiming Henry was the devil's son, claiming the forest would reveal the truth. Henry wore armor beneath his cloak. He carried daggers in his boots. And he kept the amulet close to his heart. It pulsed. It warned. It wept. Cocanas led the rear guard. He had seen madness before, on battlefields, in taverns, in the eyes of dying men. But Charles was different. His madness was not born of blood. It was born of prophecy. And Cocanas had begun to fear that prophecy was real. The hunt began at dawn. Charles ordered the hounds released. They vanished into the mist. The riders followed, hooves pounding, breath steaming. Arrows flew. Horns blared. And then, silence. The forest swallowed them. Henry found himself alone. The mist thickened. The trees shifted. The amulet pulsed. He saw visions, Margot in chains, La Mole bleeding, Catherine crowned in bone. He saw Charles screaming. He saw Cocanas dead. He turned. And Charles was there. The king attacked. No warning. No words. Just steel and fury. Henry dodged, parried, struck. Their blades clashed like thunder. Blood flew. The forest watched. Chapter 7, Oaths of Fire. The Temple of Embers had not seen fire in 100 years. Its altar, once used for rites of flame and blood, had grown cold. Its walls, carved with forgotten runes, had faded. But tonight, the fire returned. Margot and La Mole stood before the altar, cloaked in shadow and silver. Cocanas kept watch at the entrance. Henry lingered in the back, silent, unreadable. The air shimmered. The amulet pulsed. And the vow began. Margot held a vial of flame water, an alchemical brew said to bind souls. She poured it into the brazier. The fire roared to life, blue and gold, casting dancing shadows across their faces. La Mole knelt. "I swear," he said, voice steady, "to love you beyond death, beyond prophecy, beyond the ruin of kingdoms." Margot knelt beside him. "I swear," she whispered, "to fight for you, even if it means defying my blood, my crown, and my fate." The fire flared. The amulet blazed. and the runes on the walls began to glow. Henry stepped forward. He placed the amulet between them. "It's yours now," he said. "It chose you." Margot touched it. Visions flooded her mind, La Mole bleeding, Catherine screaming, Henry alone beneath a shattered sky. She gasped. La Mole caught her. And the vow was sealed. Catherine watched from her tower. She had seen the fire. She had felt the pulse. And she had begun to understand. The prophecy was no longer hers to control. It had chosen Margot. She summoned her apothecaries. "Prepare the final poison," she said. Charles IX lay in the royal crypt. His body had not yet cooled. His crown had not yet been buried. And yet, his mural still moved, faces shifting, flames flickering, eyes blinking. Catherine entered. She placed a vial on his chest. And she whispered, "Forgive me." Margot and La Mole returned to the castle. They did not hide. They did not lie. They walked through the halls like fire and storm, hand in hand, eyes blazing. The court whispered. The nobles trembled. And Catherine smiled. Henry met with Cocanas. They spoke of rebellion, of escape, of prophecy. Henry revealed the truth. The amulet had shown him two endings. One where Margot ruled in fire. One where she died in chains. Cocanas asked, "Which one do you believe?" Henry replied, "The one she chooses." La Mole trained in the courtyard. His sword sang through the air. His armor gleamed. But his thoughts were elsewhere. Margot. He had sworn to protect her. To love her. To fight for her. And now, he would die for her. Catherine brewed the final poison. It shimmered like moonlight. It smelled of roses and rot. She poured it into a goblet and handed it to her steward. "Slip it into the night's wine," she said. The steward hesitated. Catherine's eyes burned. "Do it." Margot found Henry in the chapel. They spoke in whispers. "You gave me the amulet," she said. "I gave you the truth." Margot touched his hand. "I never meant to hurt you." Henry smiled, sad and soft. "You didn't." La Mole drank the wine. And the dreams returned. Margot in chains. Catherine crowned in bone. Henry bleeding beneath the stars. He awoke in a sweat. And he could not breathe. Margot rushed to his side. She saw the goblet. She smelled the poison. She screamed. And the castle trembled. Henry arrived. He placed the amulet on La Mole's chest. It pulsed. It blazed. And the poison began to fade. Catherine watched from her tower. She saw the fire. She saw the love. And she saw her own reflection, cracking. She screamed. And the comet flared. Chapter 8: Storm in the Tower. The Tower of Stars had stood for centuries. Built from obsidian and bone, it pierced the sky like a blade. Its halls were lined with mirrors that whispered secrets. Its windows faced the comet, which now pulsed like a heartbeat, red, relentless, ready. Tonight, the storm came. Lightning split the sky. Thunder shook the stones. And inside the tower, the final pieces of the prophecy began to fall into place. Margot stood at the highest window. Her gown clung to her skin, soaked from the rain. Her hair whipped in the wind. Her eyes burned with fury. La Mole lay in the infirmary, recovering from Catherine's poison. Henry had vanished into the crypts. Cocanas had begun sharpening his blades. And Catherine? She was preparing the ritual. In the Chamber of Mirrors, the Queen Mother stood surrounded by runes and relics. Her robes shimmered with alchemical symbols. Her fingers dripped with blood and ink. She had summoned the sorcerer. He arrived cloaked in shadow, his face hidden, his voice like wind through bone. "You seek to rewrite fate," he said. "I seek to control it." The sorcerer laughed. "Then you will die by it." Henry descended into the crypts. He carried the amulet. He carried a blade. And he carried a secret. The Codex of Ilarion had revealed the final truth. The prophecy could be broken, but only by sacrifice. Not of blood. Of love. He reached the tomb of the first queen, the one who had sealed the flame of the end. He placed the amulet on her crown. And the storm screamed. La Mole awoke. He felt the fire in his veins. He felt Margot's kiss on his lips. And he felt the prophecy pulling him toward the tower. He rose. He dressed. And he walked into the storm. Cocanas met him at the gates. "You're mad," he said. "I'm in love." Cocanas nodded. "Same thing." They entered the tower. Margot descended the stairs. She had seen Catherine's ritual in a vision, mirrors cracking, blood boiling, the comet crashing. She had seen herself crowned in flame. And she had seen La Mole die. She would not allow it. She reached the Chamber of Mirrors. And the battle began. Catherine raised her hands. The runes flared. The mirrors shattered. The sorcerer vanished. Margot stepped forward. "You poisoned him. I saved you. You tried to kill me. I tried to protect you." Margot drew her blade. And the storm struck. La Mole arrived. He saw Margot. He saw Catherine. He saw the fire. He stepped between them. Catherine screamed. The mirrors exploded. And the comet pulsed. Henry arrived. He held the amulet. He saw the chaos. And he made his choice. He placed the amulet on the altar. He whispered the final words. And the prophecy shattered. The storm ended. The tower fell silent. Catherine collapsed. Margot wept. La Mole held her. Henry walked away. The comet faded. The runes dimmed. And the world changed. Chapter 9: A Kiss Before Death. The castle was quiet. Not peaceful, never that. But quiet, like the breath before a scream. The comet had dimmed, its pulse slower now, as if watching. Waiting. Margot walked the halls alone. Her gown was black velvet, her hair braided with silver thorns. Her eyes were dry. She had cried enough. She had fought enough. And now, she was ready. Ready to choose. Ready to lose. La Mole stood in the chapel. He had recovered from the poison, but not from the prophecy. He had seen visions, Margot crowned in fire, Catherine melting into ash, Henry bleeding beneath the stars. He had sworn to protect her. Now he feared he would destroy her. Henry watched from the tower. He had placed the amulet on the altar. He had spoken the words. And the prophecy had cracked, but not broken. He saw Margot in his dreams. He saw her kiss La Mole. And he saw himself alone. Catherine brewed her final spell. Not poison. Not prophecy. Death. She had found an ancient rite, one that could sever fate itself. But it required blood. Royal blood. Margot's blood. She summoned her apothecaries. Tonight, she said. Kokana sharpened his blades. He had seen the signs. He had heard the whispers. And he had begun to understand. The Queen Mother would not stop. The prophecy would not bend. And Margot would not survive. Unless someone died first. Margot found La Mole in the chapel. He turned. She stepped forward. They kissed. It was not soft. It was not sad. It was fire. It was war. It was everything. Henry entered. He saw them. He did not speak. He did not cry. He simply turned away. And the comet pulsed. Catherine prepared the altar. She placed the dagger. She lit the candles. She whispered the words. And the storm began. Margot awoke in chains. She was in the crypts, beneath the castle, beneath the world. The walls were carved with runes. The air smelled of ash. Catherine stood above her. You were never meant to rule, she said. I was meant to love. Catherine raised the dagger. La Mole arrived. The battle was chaos. Blades clashed. Spells flared. Blood flew. Kokanas fought like a beast. Henry wielded the amulet like a sword. La Mole reached Margot. And Catherine screamed. The dagger struck. Not Margot. La Mole. He fell. Margot caught him. He smiled. I love you. She kissed him. And the prophecy shattered. The comet vanished. The runes faded. The chains broke. And Catherine collapsed. Henry held Margot. She wept. He did not speak. He simply stayed. La Mole was buried beneath the silver tree. Margot placed the amulet on his grave. It pulsed once. Then dimmed. Chapter 10, Fate and the Sword. The castle gates groaned open. Not for celebration. Not for ceremony. For judgment. The court had gathered in the Hall of Blades, a chamber carved from black stone and lit by torches that flickered like dying stars. The comet had vanished, but its shadow lingered. The prophecy had cracked, but its echoes remained. Margot stood at the center. Her gown was crimson silk, her crown braided with thorns. Her eyes were steel. She was no longer a bride. She was a queen. La Mole's grave lay beneath the silver tree. The amulet rested on the stone, pulsing faintly. Kokanas visited each night, whispering stories, sharpening blades, waiting. He had sworn to protect Margot. Now he would avenge her. Henry stood in the chapel. He had seen the prophecy unfold. He had watched Margot choose love. He had watched La Mole die. And he had begun to understand. The amulet had never been his. It had always belonged to her. Catherine had vanished. Some said she fled to the mountains. Others claimed she had dissolved into ash. But Margot knew better. She was waiting. The court demanded answers. Who killed the king? Who poisoned the knight? Who betrayed the crown? Margot stepped forward. I did, she said. Gasps echoed. I chose love. I defied fate. I broke the chain. The nobles murmured. The priests wept. And the sword was drawn. Kokanas challenged the steward. He had found the vial. He had traced the poison. He had seen the lies. They fought in the courtyard. Steel clashed. Blood flew. Kokanas won. But he did not smile. Henry faced the nobles. They accused him of sorcery, of treason, of prophecy. He did not deny it. He simply placed the amulet on the altar. It pulsed. It blazed. And the truth was revealed. Margot saw visions. La Mole smiling. Catherine screaming. Henry bleeding. She saw herself crowned in fire. And she saw herself alone. She chose. She summoned the court. She raised her sword. And she spoke. I will rule. Not by prophecy. Not by poison. By truth. The nobles bowed. The priests knelt. And the crown was hers. Henry left the castle. He did not speak. He did not cry. He simply walked. And the amulet dimmed. Kokanas stayed. He became Margot's blade. Her shield. Her fury. The comet never returned. But the stars watched. And the prophecy slept. Chapter 11, The Night of Crimson Torches. The torches were lit. Hundreds of them. Crimson flames flickering in the rain, lining the streets of Caer Thorn like veins of fire. The bells tolled, not for celebration, not for mourning, but for purge. The Queen Mother had returned. Not in flesh. In fury. Her final spell had awakened the old blood, an ancient rite buried beneath the castle, sealed by the first queens, forbidden by every priest since. But Catherine had broken the seal. And now, the city burned. Margot stood on the balcony of the Tower of Stars. She wore armor beneath her gown. Her crown was gone. Her sword was drawn. She watched the torches blaze, heard the screams echo, felt the prophecy clawing at her throat. La Mole was gone. Henry had vanished. Kokanas was preparing for war. And Catherine? She had become something else. The massacre began at midnight. The Crimson Guard, once loyal to the crown, now marched under Catherine's sigil, a serpent devouring a rose. They moved through the city like fire, dragging nobles from their homes, burning temples, slaughtering seers. The sky turned red. The comet returned. And the prophecy awakened. Kokonas led the resistance. He had gathered the remnants of the silver flame, the loyalists, the dreamers. They fought in the alleys, on the bridges, in the crypts. Steel clashed. Blood flowed. And Kokonas roared. He had sworn to protect Margot. Now he fought to save her soul. Henry returned at dawn. He carried the amulet. It no longer pulsed. It burned. He found Margot in the tower. She turned. They did not speak. They simply kissed. It was not gentle. It was not soft. It was war. Catherine stood in the hall of mirrors. She had become shadow, her eyes black, her voice a whisper, her soul bound to the old blood. She summoned the final flame. It rose. It screamed. It reached for Margot. Margot descended the tower. She wore La Mole's blade. She wore Henry's amulet. She wore Kokonas's oath. She entered the hall of mirrors. And she faced her mother. The duel was not of steel. It was of fire. Of prophecy. Of love. Catherine struck with flame. Margot countered with truth. The mirrors shattered. The runes screamed. And the comet fell. Henry arrived. He placed the amulet on the altar. It blazed. It broke. And Catherine dissolved. The torches died. The massacre ended. The city wept. Margot stood in the ashes. She did not cry. She did not speak. She simply watched the sunrise. Chapter 12, The Light Beyond. The city of Carethorn was quiet. Not broken. Not healed. Changed. The massacre had ended. The comet had vanished. The torches had burned out. And the prophecy, once etched in blood and flame, now lay dormant, like a dragon in slumber. Margot stood at the gates of the castle. She wore no crown. She carried no sword. She held only a letter. La Mole's final words. If love is a flame, let me burn. If fate is a chain, let me break it. If death is the price, let me pay it. For you. She folded the parchment. And she walked into the dawn. Kokonas remained. He had buried the dead. He had rebuilt the walls. He had trained the next generation of knights, not for war, but for truth. He visited La Mole's grave each morning. He whispered stories. He sharpened blades. And he waited. Henry returned once. Only once. He stood beneath the silver tree, the amulet in his hand, the wind in his hair. He did not speak. He did not cry. He simply placed the amulet on the grave. It pulsed once. Then faded. And he left. Catherine was never found. Some say she became shadow. Some say she became ash. Some say she waits in the mountains, whispering to mirrors, dreaming of fire. Margot never searched for her. She had already buried her. The castle became a sanctuary. Not for nobles. For dreamers. For lovers. For those who believed in fire and truth and the power of choice. Margot ruled not with steel. With story. With memory. With love. She wrote a book. Not of prophecy. Of La Mole. Of Henry. Of Cocanas. Of Catherine. Of herself. It was read in every corner of the realm. And it ended with a single line. I chose love. And the world changed. The comet never returned. But the stars watched. And the flame endured. And so the fire faded, but the story lives on. If this tale stirred something in you, if you felt the heartbeat of prophecy, the ache of love, the clash of blades, then don't let it end here. Tap that subscribe button to follow the next chapter of destiny. Leave a comment to tell me which moment burned brightest for you. And if you believe in stories that dare to love, betray, and rise again, like this episode to keep the flame alive. This is only the beginning. The stars are watching. And the next prophecy is already whispering.